Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
And we're back with Key Pacific StrataLife on CL 650. I'm Tony Gioventu, the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association, and your host, Dan O'Hearn from Key Pacific Management and Gord Lee from CMW Insurance are with us in the studio. We're talking about when your strata gets sued. So our Strata Corporation has just received a notice from someone that they have a human rights complaint. They filed a complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal. So what do we do, Gord?
Take that document, attach it to an email, and send it off to the broker and let them know that you received this notice of claim.
Yeah.
And let the broker give you advice on it. And most likely, we will forward that to the insurance company and have the insurance company respond, have their lawyers respond.
Well, one of the weird things with stratas is, Dan, you mentioned this, that stratas just have this apprehension about filing a claim because they're afraid their insurance is going to go up. With D&O and liability claims, unless they're a frequent flyer where they're constantly doing things, if they have the odd claim, it doesn't have an impact.
No, I've never. Policy. In fact, I've never seen it have an impact where a strata says, "Oh, like your insurance was renewed because you had a liability claim and the premium goes up."
Right.
Most of us, what we do. Like on our program, for example, it's not tied into the property. It's a different underwriter that does the liability directors and officers. So those claims that we see, it's really not the fault of the strata. I mean, the odd case where there's the stratas have slip and fall claims and they may inspect the strata later and things aren't done, then I can see it. But usually it's not the rate going up. They would make recommendations. You need to repair these areas, right? Tiles are missing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If it's a neglect situation, and it may be a situation where the insurer just simply says, you've been aware of this. This is an issue that we've identified. You didn't remedy it. This is now a problem. There is no insurance for this.
Correct. Yeah, that would be only end up. I've never seen that happen. Very odd for a case where I've seen, a strata where, they needed some maintenance done.
Yes.
So they made the recommendation and a strata, follow through and within 3 months had everything repaired and renewed insurance. No insurance increase in rates or deductibles in any way.
So breaches of privacy. I've had here's a good example. Strata Corporation ends up that they have a rental bylaw. Somebody's come along, they request a hardship exemption, they give all their financial records. Those financial records don't end up being confidential and they end up being shared with people and the person turns around. They have a potential privacy complaint through through PIPA, through the Information Protection Act, but they also have a potential lawsuit against Strata Corporation.
Who leaked it?
Who leaked it? Yeah.
That information really can't leave the room of the Strata Council who's making these recommendations, and then it's got to be all shredded afterwards. I'd hate to think that if there was some kind of animosity or going on and somebody is releasing information to get back to this individual, but the corporation is going to be drawn into that, and for the actions of an individual, the property management firm is going to be drawn into that. And no doubt the council, right?
Well, and we see the same thing for human rights for access. Somebody needs a special modification done. They've disclosed personal medical information. That personal medical information then becomes public within the strata. There are not a lot of secrets in strata corporations, but the strata does have an obligation to maintain the utmost of confidentiality on some of those records. And then you end up having a multiple issue. You have, potential injury against this individual. You have a human rights claim, and so the insurer is faced with this on a multiple number of fronts.
Yeah, and we're going through that now, actually. I mean, Gordon probably is aware of that. And, the allegations on the human rights is that the person was treated unfairly given their condition. The reality is we didn't really know they had a condition.
Right.
But it's playing that card.
Right.
And again, this gets back to don't take it personal. These people feel that they've been done wrong. And they're entitled to their day, right? And let's just go through it. But there's going to be costs associated with this, and the corporations have to be advised, and fund has to be put aside, and just move through it.
Well, and I think the quality of the relationship and the service that everybody gets isn't about the fact that something went wrong. It's how did we fix it? Right?
Yeah.
That's the purpose of insurance. It's purpose of the strata management services. D&O insurance. So directors and officers liability. I think people have a few misconceptions about what that covers, but in essence, it's errors that were unintentionally committed by the Strata Corporation.
Yep. So the directors and officers have made an error, whether they did something or didn't do something, and it's caused a financial loss.
Right.
To a third party, and usually that third party is going to be, of course, a individual unit owner.
Right.
And so there's a lawsuit that follows through that for that financial loss.
So what about a buyer who comes along and gets the wrong information in a Form B information certificate? The incorrect information has been disclosed. Is that under a D&O claim? So, you know, I give you an example that's actually perfect, where it says, are there any resolutions pending where the Strata has not yet voted on things for 3/4 vote resolution? It could be a big special levy.
Yes.
And if the Strata didn't disclose that information on the Form B, and the buyer comes along and buys, they weren't disclosed to the fact that, hey, wait a minute, we're each going to be paying a $17,000 special levy. That's the kind of claim.
Yes, that a D&O would cover. So it's
Right.
not for the bodily injuries and property damage what we talked about earlier, which falls under a general liability policy. It's for the financial loss. So probably would be the lawsuit from the new purchaser saying, you know, I'm going to sue the Strata Corporation because the $17,000, if I've known, I may not have bought the unit. So I think you, as a directors and officer of Strata Corporation, need to compensate me.
Before we leave the show, let's talk about earthquake for a section. So earthquake insurance, again, misunderstood, but I'm in a high-rise building that has a $35 million asset value. My insurance deductible says 10%. What does that mean?
It means the Strata Corporation must pay the first $3.5 million. It's a deductible of whatever the loss amount is.
Right.
So if the loss amount, of course, is below the 3.5, there's no claim. So most people would get sometimes, and I would say probably most 50% of people out there would get confused and say that 10% deductible, they think that if there's a $100 claim, that they would have to pay the 10% of the $100.
Right.
And that's not wrong. That's called co-insurance,
Right.
which I think they're more used to using that term in
Right.
extended health medical, like
Right.
like a dental or extended health.
Right.
But a deductible is you must pay the first portion, and any loss above that amount, the insurance company covers. A lot of money.
I'm in a 100-unit high-rise that has a value of $35 million, and our deductible is $3.5 million. That means that each unit's share, plus or minus the unit entitlement, is going to be $35,000 a unit for the deductible. And yet we go back to the problem that less than 50% of the people probably have homeowner policies, and of those policies, many of them may not cover that $35,000 deductible. So if and when we do have a major event and we have a claim, how are people going to pay for their deductibles?
That's a good question, and I think that's going to be very difficult. I would think a large amount of people would not have those funds available to pay that deductible.
Yeah.
But the deductible will be based on the actual loss, right? So
the value.
The value. But you're talking about a total catastrophic loss of a single building. A lot of the wood frame, there are 3 or 4 structures. You'll have a loss of perhaps one building, but not all of.
Correct.
Yeah. But still, the deductible is based upon the policy, the gross value of the policy.
Of the entire policy, even though only one building is damaged.
That's right.
Well, some of us do provide coverage. Like, for example, we would provide coverage on ours for that building only. We would separate the value, so whatever value of the building. Yeah.
If you've done that on the policy, that could be possible.
That's possible. But still, it's still a 10% of the value of that building. So if that's a $3 million building, for example.
Yeah.
But a better way to structure a policy,
because
perhaps.
there would be likelihood there will be less unit owners to spread out. So that separate building may only have 4 unit owners. That's responsible, say, for $300,000, which is still a lot of money.
But it's unlikely that one building into 4 buildings is going to be the only building that's damaged.
Correct.
Right? There's going to be, and the difficulty with that is, and it's not just the 3.5 million, it's also the amount under the deductible that causes the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you so much both for being on the show. Gord Lee from CMW Insurance, Dan Hearn from Key Pacific Management. If you have any questions, please send them to us at questions@strata.life. Happy Strata Living.